welcome to MLB Tonight, presented by Camping World, coming to you via NTT Home Plate Cam. Say hello to Harold Reynolds and Dan Plesac. I am Fran Charles. Guys, how you doing, eh? What's up?
I'm doing good, man. How about you?
Doing all right, DP?
I'm bored. I need some baseball, Fran. Bad. I need some baseball bad. Really bad.
All right, well, hopefully we're going to get there. Let's jump into the topic of where Major League Baseball is with the Major League Baseball Players Association. And so the MLBPA put out a statement yesterday, and I'm just going to kind of paraphrase for you in terms of where we are in terms of see if we can get baseball going here in 2020. And this is kind of the heart of the matter, saying Thursday, we held a conference call of the Associate Executive Board and several other MLBPA player leaders. The overwhelming consensus of the board is that the players are ready to report, ready to get back on the field, and they are willing to do so under unprecedented conditions that could affect the health and safety of not just themselves, but their families. The league's demand for additional concessions was resoundingly rejected. And so let's kind of take you back and give you the bullet points, just kind of show where we are. So back in March, Major League Baseball agreed to prorate the salaries for the players, but there was a contingency in that agreement that was based on whether there was going to be fans allowed to come see the games. And so that was always the case. So then fast forward here, Major League Baseball then said, once they kind of figured the fan situation might be a little dicey, how about we play an 80 to 82 game schedule, and then we split the revenues? And the players pushed back and said, we already agreed to one pay cut. We don't necessarily want another pay cut. And so earlier this week, the players proposed a 114 game season with prorated salaries, and the league is countering with a 50 to 52-ish game season, but with expanded playoffs. And the players don't have to sign off on the expanded playoffs as well. So Harold and Dan and Ace, let me start with you. A lot of back and forth here. How close do you think we are to having baseball, or how far away?
Well, it's hard to tell how far we are apart. Clearly, they're far apart. But I do think the common ground is that everybody wants to play baseball. The interesting thing here is the money is in the playoffs. And with the expanded possible playoff, puts more teams in the playoffs, and that would give the players more revenue. So each side is trying to figure out how can we get paid. That's why the players want so many regular season games, because those is guaranteed revenue for them. But I look at it this way, Dan. The world is not the same in June as it was in March. And so the simplest thing, I know they did a deal in March based on what we all thought we might be coming out of, but I don't think anybody expected the world to see 40 million people laid off of their jobs, unemployed, put it that way, and all the things that were going on in this world today in June. So I do believe that, in my mind, the only way they're going to get this resolved, you want to work on the old tactics that Dan and I dealt with, Fran, never going to happen. They're going to have to come up with a new idea, a new way of thinking. And to me, it's almost like a COVID-19 deal, that we're going to work something out strictly for the pandemic situation that we're in, for the better good of the game, for everybody involved. And then you'll know what kind of fans are coming to the games in a year or two. Anyway, we have no idea what the gates are going to look like from now and even next summer. I'm not sitting there lined up to go to a game right now, and I don't think a whole lot of people are. So that's a piece that we just don't know. I think we're trying to negotiate on the unknown instead of negotiating on what you do know.
Harold, all I can remember is this: the last work stoppage in 1994. And I asked the people of Montreal how that affected the way they looked at baseball. That was the beginning of the end in Montreal. Harold, I think you touched on it and you hit the nail on the head. This is a crazy time that we're in right now in 2020. So many unemployed. And I have people coming up to me all the time asking me, when is baseball going to be back? I can't wait to watch some baseball. I hope that both sides can come to an agreement, because there's a window right now where people are really jonesing and wanting to see baseball. They want to watch the Yankees play, the Red Sox, the Dodgers, the Cubs, the Brewers, the Mets. They want to watch their favorite teams. There's a whole lot of nothing that's been going on as far as entertainment for live sports. And I hope that they don't waste this opportunity to get back onto the field. It happened in 94. And I just think, Harold, right now, there are a lot of people that really don't care one way or another. They just want to see baseball. It's a crazy world we're in right now, and this won't last forever.
You know, and I speak, Dan, 94 was the last time I played in the major leagues. And I never thought my career was going to be over. But that's what happens when you go through these exhausted negotiations. Somebody in the middle gets left out. I had plenty of years left of playing time ahead of me. There's a lot of Major League Baseball players sitting out there right now that have years to still play. But if you continue to drag this out and you bring finances so deep into it, somebody's not going to play again. That is just how it's going to end. That's how the numbers will get worked out. And so hopefully for that player, for that ownership, for the whole situation, for fans and for all of us in baseball, that they get back on the field, they figure it out, and they get playing.
Dan, hey, look, one component that could help bring in some more money is the fact Major League Baseball making an announcement earlier this week that they're now going to allow local governing officials to make the call on fans based on their particular state. And so we've already seen Governor Greg Abbott of Texas say that he is willing to allow Globe Life Field, the new stadium for the Rangers, to be at 50% capacity. Before that, they were saying up to 25% capacity. And so that could be a way where you're actually going to have not only games, but fans in the stands. Now, obviously, Dan, it's all contingent upon what's going on with COVID-19, and it's fluid if there's an uptick in the cases. But fans in the stands, that certainly could help.
Fran, and I think there is some pressure for Major League Baseball. It looks like the NBA has figured out a way how to get back, how to resume their schedule. The same for hockey. And I think that most fans in general, they're not really worrying about picking one side or another. If hockey, basketball, soccer can get their act together and back on the court, on the ice, on the playing field, and if baseball can't seem to get their things settled, I think it'll be a long time. And I think a lot of people will be turned off by the fact that the owners, the players can't come to agreement. I think you're going to lose a segment of fans that are going to say, I've had it with this.
You know, the last point for me, I do believe that there will be baseball. I just think they're going to get this thing worked out. There's just too many negatives that weigh against the positives of them not playing. So I think they're going to get this thing figured out. The last piece of it, Fran, and I've always said this, if you figure out the health and safety, the rest of it will take care of itself. And that includes spring training. And a lot of people are saying the window is coming to a close. Spring training can be shrunk. Players can start working out on their own. We can get that dealt with, but they got to get a few issues squared away. But I think we're going to play.
All right, sounds good. Let's hope you're right, H, no doubt. One thing we know it's going to happen next week is the MLB Draft. And you can see it live on MLB Network coming up on Wednesday and Thursday. Oh, Mike Trout, he was the first pick we saw in our MLB Network draft debut. We'll talk to Vanderbilt head coach Tim Corbin coming up next.
MLB Tonight is presented by Camping World, making RVing fun and easy since 1966. Visit campingworld.com today.
You talk about the lineage of Vanderbilt University.
Long line of Vanderbilt monsters. The list goes on and on.
Struck him out, and he does it with players. Another sensational performance. This guy throws hard, unhittable. Fielder keeps on rolling. It's another homer for Dansby. Boy, is he driving the ball. Swing and a drive, and Dansby walks him off.
Back on MLB Tonight, those are some of the great players who went to Vanderbilt to play now in Major League Baseball. And a look back at the last year's draft, the Major League Baseball draft coming up on June 10th. 13 players out of Tim Corbin's players program were drafted last year. J.J. Bleday leading the way, top prospect in the Marlins organization. And let's welcome in Tim Corbin. Tim has been the head coach at Vanderbilt since 2003, and of course, a World Series champion in 2014 and 2019, and also made a World Series appearance in 2015. Tim is going to be part of our MLB Network draft coverage coming up on June 10th. It's Harold and Fran. First off, a question for me, Tim. Why has Vanderbilt been able to put together the type of program where we've seen so many of the players go on to have great success in the majors?
Well, I think number one is locating those players and trying to find the right fit for the university and our program. I think that's so important. Two would be the school itself. I really feel like in a lot of different ways that being a private school and our ability to accentuate on academics, it helps these kids. It really grows their mind, and to start organizing their mind and their thoughts does enable them to be better baseball players. We've seen so many kids that, and you showed a graphic of David Price right out of the gates, but kids who have started tapping into mental skills that I don't think they thought they had. And when that happened, it really built their self-esteem and built their confidence, and you could see it grow on the baseball field. So it would be easy to say we're fortunate, but we are fortunate. We're fortunate to grab some good players and still maintain a level of consistency.
Let's focus right back on June next week, June 10th and 11th. But this guy's going to go on June 10th. I want to talk about Spencer Torkelson from Arizona State, projected the #1 pick.
Well, I really like him as a hitter. Now, I can't tell you that I've sat in the other dugout and played against him and had to come up with a pitch plan. But what you're seeing is an elite hitter. You're seeing an elite hitter that has strength, and as you see right there, can hit both sides of the ballpark. He's got great pre-pitch rhythm. When I look at him, I look at, a guy like Pete Alonso. I know he plays first base, and I talked to the USA coaches, and they really liked his hands over at first base, but I'm not so sure he's not a kid that you might be able to bump over to third base or potentially a corner outfield spot too, because he's athletic enough. But the bat's going to play for sure, and it's going to be loud.
Well, it almost sounds like the guy that you had in Austin Martin, who can play all over the diamond and be able to play different places. You didn't have to come up with a game plan to get him out, but you had to come up with a game plan to get him in your lineup. And so tell us a little bit about your player, Austin Martin, and give us about his makeup and what kind of player he is.
Well, there's a lot of position versatility to the kid. And I think you mentioned it after I was talking yesterday about his ability to play center field and play the infield, and he did all of those things as a freshman. And if you had to say what position he's going to play right away at the professional level, I would say second base or center field. He, to me, is a triangle player. He can play that second, short, center field position. It's where you notice him is the offense. The offense is really, really good. He can get to the middle of the ball. This hitter is more of a, I would say, Mookie Betts-ish type player where there's gap power, there's great speed, and he's one of the best base runners I've ever coached in terms of his ability to get great jumps off the bat. The intangibles, because I have been around him, and we were talking about this too, is there's a compete factor in him that is extreme. And he keeps it simple, Harold. He competes against the ball. It doesn't matter what the competition is. It doesn't matter who the dude is on the mound. It doesn't matter who he's playing against, the team. He's coming after you.
I know
Coach,
Fran is salivating over that. He thinks he's a competitor too. Look at him jumping in. It's his turn.
Come on, H. Let me get a question in. Coach, we talked about Spencer earlier, and you said you didn't have the good fortune to see him a lot because of the conference that he plays in. But give us a couple of players that we're going to hear about with the draft who play in the SEC who you do get an opportunity to see.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's several. I mean, Lacey, left-handed pitcher from Texas A&M, we faced him last year, and you talk about big, durable, strong kids, left-handed arm, a kid who's continued to get better. He was very dominant at this level. The fastball's mid-90s fastball, and the slider has continued to get better. If you talk to his coach, Rob Childress, he would tell you that it was a curveball slider, and now he's gone to a slider, and that slider's gotten better, and he can really slow the ball down. Crochet's one of those kids at Tennessee that hasn't pitched a lot as a starter, would probably have done that this year. And I really like this kid because of his growth. He's really taken off too. It's another mid-90s fastball, and hitters give you the best information that you can get as a coach. When they face Crochet, they say, the ball's very dark, coach. You can't see it. This is a good competitor, too. And we're talking about hitters in our league, and I think one of the better hitters, at least we faced against, and a guy that I really feel is going to have a chance to get to the big leagues relatively quick is Kierstead, Heston Kierstead out of Arkansas. He's got big time power. He can hit a ball a long way. So he's a guy who can hit balls out to left field, right field, and he can hit for average. He's a guy who can hit for average too, kind of a corner outfielder, but I wouldn't be shocked to see that kid play first base someday too, because he's a very driven individual.
All right, folks, this is the kind of great analysis you're going to get coming up on Wednesday, June 10th, for the MLB Draft. You can see right here on MLB Network, Vanderbilt head coach Tim Corbin. Tim, thanks for spending some time with us, and we can't wait.
Fran, Harold, thank you very much.
All right, so obviously Vandy's season was cut short like everyone else's college season this spring, but they were able to get underway. We're going to flash back for you coming up Saturday at 4 Eastern, the MLB 4 tournament, Michigan and Vanderbilt. It is a rematch of the 2019 College World Series, where Vandy was able to lose the first game, but then come back and take the final two. And so we'll see how these guys opened up the 2020 season. But Harold, let's bring you back in here real quick. And we saw kind of the quick board there that showed kind of the top prospects in terms of MLB.com and where we think players are going to go in this draft. You saw a lot of college players, not too many high school players, but there is one high school player on that board that I know you want to take a deeper look at.
Yeah, I want to dive in and look at Zach Veen. I think is a top high school player. He's that good. We watched the kid grow. I spoke with him the other day. He entered high school as 5'11", 140 pounds, and now he's leaving high school at about 6'4", a little over 200 pounds. That's how much he's grown. Ooh. This is Cody Bellinger right here, folks, taking these swings right here. Does he not look like Cody Bellinger? That's Cody in high school. On the left is Zach right in high school, his junior year. And on the right is Cody Bellinger, his senior year in high school. And I just point that out because of the body change. Look how much bigger he got over one season. That's the uniqueness of a high school kid, the growth and how much physically bigger they're going to get. And that's Zach Veen. He has jumped off the charts for me. The more I watch him play, the more I get to talk with the kid. I really believe that had a season been played fully for high school kids, we'd be talking about him as the first pick in the country.
All right, a good look there at Zach from Harold. And a quick reminder here, you can catch the 2020 MLB Draft Wednesday, June 10th, and Thursday, June 11th, live right here on MLB Network. Just 5 rounds this year, but you're going to get great in-depth coverage, and it all starts next Wednesday, beginning at 5 p.m. Eastern. And speaking of the draft, I'm going to take a quick break here on MLB Tonight. Coming up next, Steven Nelson is going to talk to a couple guys. We're going to hear their names called early, and a couple of surprise guests crash the interviews. That's next. Welcome back to MLB Tonight, presented by Camping World. All right, we got the draft coming up on Wednesday and Thursday, June 10th and 11th. And I hear some programming to get you set, including immediately following us. It's the MLB Tonight Draft Preview Spotlight. And the draftees, we're going to get to know some of those guys. And they think they're going to be talking to Steven Nelson, but Steven has some special guests who will actually be doing the interviewing, including a former player, some current players, and even a Hall of Famer. Here's a sneak peek.
Maybe you should have a more special person to talk to than me. Even though, again, we are fellow White Sox fans. So I'm going to tag in a friend of mine, a Hall of Famer, an Illinois native, and a former Chicago White Sox, Jim Thome. Jimmy, get in here.
Jim, tell us how we doing.
What's going on? How you doing?
Not too bad, man. Everything going okay?
I'm doing good. Making the best of the situation right now.
Let's start with like scouting report. And there's all kinds of great scouting reports on you. How would Ed Howard scout Ed Howard? What would be your report on yourself?
You know, honestly, if I was scouting myself, I would say I can do it on both sides of the ball, just as well. You know, I feel like I'm getting a lot of attention right now defensively, which is a good thing. You know, I take pride in playing short, but I also think that my bat plays just as well, you know, with the glove. So if I would scout myself, the thing I would say is that I'm a guy that can change the game, you know, offensively and defensively. You know, I can take runs away, I can score runs. That's kind of how I pride myself, and that's kind of how I'm going out there and playing.
SoCal, where you at? Harvard Westlake, where you at? From a man, Pete Crow Armstrong, who's hopping on now. Pete, how we feeling?
Feeling good, Steven. Thanks for having me.
No, Pete, thanks for doing this. Now, we've been told that when it comes to MLB Network, one of your favorite personalities is a former Under Armour All-American Coach years, and that being Sean Casey. So I'm going to drop a boom and let Case get in here and talk to you.
Yeah, what's up, Pete?
What up? What up?
How you doing, man? How you doing,
I'm
brother?
doing well. Damn.
Hey, listen, man. After putting you in the leadoff hole in the Under Armour All-American game, I was like, get me. I said, when Pete comes back on, I want to be interviewed. I'm Steven Nelson. I know you're in the booth, but we need to talk some hitting. We need to talk some hitting, brother.
God, good to see you. Good to see you, Case.
Good to see you too, man. Good to see you too. Dude, first off, you know, I was with you last summer. You know, man, I remember back, you know, I'm a lot older than you, bro, but I remember back to this time getting ready to get drafted. You know, for you right now, coming up onto the draft, man, like what are some of the thoughts going through your head leading up to June 10th?
You know, it's exciting for sure. I think that's the first feeling I have. But you know, the few years that, you know, I felt like this was a possibility. They felt like they flew by, and then, you know, the last month or two have felt like it's kind of just dragged along. And so I think there's definitely little nerves in there, but you know, it's mostly excitement. It's that kind of that butterfly feeling you get in your stomach. But I'm excited, and you know, if it works out the way that I hope it does, then, you know, I'm grateful to whoever picks me.
Dude, great seeing you again, man. Looking forward to a couple weeks where you get drafted, and I'll definitely see you down the road, my man.
Thanks, Case. I appreciate you hopping on. It's good seeing you.
All right, back with Harold and Dan on Fran. It was so cool to see Pete and Ann. I mean, their faces just lit up, no doubt, when they saw Jim and Case. So, and how about you can't help but see Sean and get fired up, Harold, with that enthusiasm, man. And Case got a little Silver Fox action working up.
Yeah, no, Case is top notch, one of the top people in this game, and even a better person than he was a great player. You know, he's one of the people we want to be around. But I tell you, Dan, you know, it's amazing how many people along the way have major impacts on you outside of family, coaches, everything else that come along the way. And, you know, that's the cool part of being in the sport.
You know, Harold, we've all had somebody that helped us get there in pro ball, particularly because it's a different game from high school and college, and you get the pro ball where the stakes are higher. It's about you and advancing. And we all have a guy. I had two guys really help me out. Mike Pasek was the roving minor league pitching instructor with the Milwaukee Brewers. And Fran, as you well know, I'm a little bit out there sometimes. And so if you guy can understand me and speak my language, this is a pretty talented guy. But Mike Pasek helped me out. And then my A-ball manager, Tim Norbrook, called me out one day. Harold, you know, when you're a starting pitcher, you have the bucket the next day. So you have to go out there and all the out balls and batting practice, you put him in the bucket, you put him out there. And Tim Norbrook said to me one day, he said, Dan, you remember your first girlfriend? You have to wrap your arms around baseball better than your first girlfriend. Because you know what? You got to love baseball more than you ever loved anything ever in your life. And he walked away from me, Harold. And like 2 days later, I went in his office, you know, that open door policy. And I said, man, did you call me out? He goes, yeah. He goes, you have no business being in Stockton right now. You show up. We tell you to be here at 5. You show up at 5. You're the last one here, the first one leave. You do your work, but you don't ever do anything extra. And that next road trip, Harold, I went and bought a book, The Art of Pitching by Tom Seaver. And Tim Norbrook gave me a wake-up call. I had to let basketball go and fall in love with baseball. And from that point on, here I am now talking to you guys.
You know, I had a couple of people too. I think along the way, my path was different because I had two older brothers who were playing pro baseball at the time, Don and my oldest brother, other brother, Larry. So along the way, they're teammates and friends. But when I got into minor league ball on my own, I had two people who really had a huge influence on me. Bill Plummer, my first A-ball manager. And Dan, it's funny you talked about A-ball because that's the introductory to like manhood in baseball. We had early morning workouts. I'm playing in Wausau, Wisconsin in April, and we had 10 a.m. workouts in the freezing cold. But Plum taught us about work ethic and all that, and really taught me a lot of baseball. And then the other guy was Marty Martinez. He was our minor league roving infield instructor. I think the biggest thing Marty did for me was he taught me how to have the right goals. You know, you set unrealistic goals half the time. So I remember after my A-ball year, my first A-ball year, I was the player of the year in the Midwest League, but I made like 34 errors. And that following spring, Marty's like, all right, we're going to set defensive goals. He goes, how many errors are you going to make this year? I go, 5. And he goes, what are you going to do after the first week? Because you're going to have 5 after the first week. Why don't you make 28 or 29 errors? That's an improvement, huge. And it just put it into perspective for me. I think I finished that year with like 10 or 12 and really had a solid defensive year. I had 3 in the first game, believe it or not. I kicked the ball, threw one away, and dropped another in the first game. So had I gone with my plan, I'd have been done after the first game.
You need the guys with the wisdom, no doubt, to help you get through. Those are both fantastic stories. All right, I'm going to take a break here on MLB Tonight. When we come back, 34 years ago, the New York Mets shocked the baseball world, coming back against the Boston Red Sox, one of the more iconic World Series matchups of all time. We'll talk to Howard Johnson about that World Series.
So the winning run is at second base with 2 out, 3-2 to Mookie Wilson. Little roller up along first, behind the bag. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it. One picture is worth 1,000 words. You have seen about 1,000,000 words. But more than that, you have seen an absolutely bizarre finish to Game 6 of the 1986 World Series. The Mets are not only alive, they are well, and they will play the Red Sox in Game 7 tomorrow.
Tom, Vin Scully always seemed able to rise to the occasion in an exciting moment without ever shouting. But I thought it was worth noting, and it humanizes him further, that his voice cracks a little bit when he says, here comes Knight, and the Mets win it, because what happened in that bottom of the 10th was so startling, and that's what capped it off.
Great observation, because Vin later on compared this to getting hit by lightning. In other words, calling no-hitters, even home runs, there's moments where you see it coming. A home run is in the air for a while. It's almost like a train pulling into a station. Once you listen to that call, and when you hear Vin say, behind the bag, and his temper begins to rise, that's the lightning bolt. So we think of Vin always being Mr. Cool, and this was the moment, I think, when the lightning bolt hit him, and he captured it perfectly, because all of us who were there that night, or especially watching on TV, were hit by that same bolt of unexpected history.
It's a call few people will ever forget. One of the most iconic calls in all of baseball. Vin Scully, Game 6 of the 1986 World Series. And you can hear that and a lot more coming up. It's a brand new documentary series that we have here on the network called The Sounds of Baseball. Vin Scully, he's going to be the first subject. It's Monday at 8 Eastern. Bob Costas and Tom Verducci will be on the mic. Great stuff, but make sure you check it out. And speaking of the 1986 World Series, we are pleased now to be joined by Howard Johnson, Hojo, who was a part of that championship team. And Hojo, we're going to make a lot of Mets fans happy here on MLB Network, because coming up Saturday, we're going to show games in 6 and 7. All Red Sox fans just send all your mail to Harold, because I send that mail to Harold. But we're going to talk about that 86 team. And I know, Howard, you were injured for a little bit of that season, but just overall, what was it like, I mean, to be a part of that season when you guys won 108 games, and then also that iconic World Series championship?
Well, 85 was such a good year. That was my first year with the Mets, and we almost got there that year. We lost, got beaten out by St. Louis last weekend, and we knew we had a good team. And but St. Louis was a little bit better than us that year, and so 86 was going to be a year where we went out to prove that we were the best team. And just like the team was on a mission. It was a lot of fun just to be a part of it. It was just such a great group of guys that, were just pulling for one, we had a desire to win this thing, and we were able to put it together and survive some scary playoff games to get it done.
Hey, Hojo, talk to me about back then in the mid 80s, power wasn't as it is looked at today, but you guys had some pop on that club. I mean, look at Strawberry, the Kid, Hernandez, yourself, Kevin Mitchell. I mean, I can go on and on. What were some of batting practice sessions or trash talking sessions when it came to power, talking about who had the most?
Well, I tried to stay out of those, Harold. I don't know about you, man, but man, I used to tell Davey, I said, Davey, man, don't hit me that last group. I can't. I don't want to go into a game watching Straw and Kid and those guys just hit balls out with ease. I said, I need to think more line drive. So can I hit the first group with the other guys, with Wally and Lenny? And I was able to kind of keep my head. You know what? I kept that mindset even after the 86, just so I could keep myself in check, because those guys, we had some power guys, like you said, man. And BP was epic.
You had that 5-year stretch where you were dynamite with the Mets. 91, you led the league in homers, so you could hit in that group that thumped too. Come on now.
Well, my home runs were wall scrapers, the way I like to describe them, but I always say they count the same, so it didn't matter to me. I didn't mind if they just got over the wall. As long as I was hitting them, I was happy. But I just tried to do my thing, and to be honest with you guys, one of the keys for my success has always been mindset and trying to not think about hitting home runs. And I tried to always put my focus on getting on base and trying to steal. And that was, as long as I kept that perspective, I was good. As soon as I started thinking home run ball, then I was in trouble. And I think a lot of home run guys probably feel the same way. I just try to use that mindset to get me through it.
Hey, when you look back at 86, and I know the Red Sox were a great team because I played against them in the American League. But did you feel like if we all talk about the Buckner era, but if you guys don't win that series, is it one of those that got away because your team was so dominant and so good?
100%, Harold, because we knew we had a good club. We felt like we had the best team out there. The Houston series was took a lot out of us. That so going into that World Series against Boston, it was going to be. It took us a little while to get our feet on the ground, but when Game 6 came around, I just remember, I was on deck. I just remember watching that ball go through his legs, and somehow we won the game when it looked like we were not going to win. And I just remember this, you guys, and I think it's important. Gary Carter, in heaven now, but back then, man, Game 6, he was going up and down the dugout telling everybody, I'm not going to be the last out of this World Series. I'm not going to make the last out. I'm not going to make the last out. And he kept telling everybody that was there. And I was going to be up 4th or 5th that inning. And, when he was saying it, I just looked in his eyes, man. He had this crazy look in his eye. And so when he got up there with 2 outs and 2 strikes and he was battling his rear end off, and for him to get a base hit and kind of start that whole process, that whole inning was incredible. I mean, it was just like pure magic.
Yeah, I mean, twice you guys were down to your final strike, but obviously it came through. So we're going to put it on a tee for you this weekend, Hojo. You're going to get an opportunity to sit back on MLB Network and check out Game 6 and 7. So enjoy. But thanks for spending some time with us. We really appreciate it.
Hey, it's my pleasure, guys. Anytime. Love you guys.
All right, that is Howard Johnson. Spent 14 years in the majors and 9 with the New York Mets. So here it is. We're going to show you Game 6 and 7 of the '86 World Series, where the Mets came back and won in iconic fashion. All right, the draft coming up Wednesday, June 10th, live on MLB Network. Coming up next, we'll flash all the way back to 1987 and one of Harold's teammates. We will hear Ken Griffey's draft story. That's next.
MLB Tonight is presented by Camping World, making RVing fun and easy since 1966. Visit campingworld.com today.
Welcome back to MLB Tonight, presented by Camping World.
Well, of course, I had heard of and watched for years Ken Griffey Sr., and then I heard about his son, who was a phenom that was 13, 14 years old and hitting these long home runs.
I can remember Junior as a young kid watching him play a few times, but once he really got into those high school years, that's when heads started turning.
I knew that there was really high interest in Kenny. It started with some area scouts, and then there were more scouts there than they were fans.
I mean, they would take tape measures out past the fence. They're out measuring up to 350, 400 because that's basically how far he was hitting.
Toward the end, there became less and less scouts, even to the point where there were only 2 or 3 in the stands because everybody knew that Junior was not going to last past the 2nd or 3rd pick.
The best decision this organization ever made was in the June draft of 1987.
Okay, we're ready to go then with the first round. The first selection goes to Seattle.
The ball club was struggling in the Northwest to put together a winning team, but they really needed somebody to rally around. They really needed a superstar.
After batting close to 500 in high school, Ken Griffey Jr. has taken a few steps on his own. A Major League Scouting report says the kid is faster and more powerful than his dad.
Atlanta was going to give him a few dollars more to say he wasn't going to sign and go ahead and sign with the Atlanta Braves, being I was on that team.
We talked about, different things a couple days before the draft. Does he want to go number 1? Can we sign him? And I had my opportunity to say, no, I'm only going to one team, or I'm not signing. But not everybody can say that they're the first pick in the country.
Seattle selection is George Kenneth Griffey, center fielder from Moeller High School in Ohio.
How do you feel?
I feel fine.
He feels fine.
There are now 2 Ken Griffeys in professional baseball. The Seattle Mariners using the number 1 pick in the nation on a 17-year-old center fielder with the genes of a major leaguer.
It's going to take a few years, and we're not going to rush him. And but we hope that in 4 or 5 years he'll be a star player for us.
That happened sooner than 4 or 5 years, no doubt. The great numbers of the illustrious Ken Griffey Jr., first ballot Hall of Famer, and back with Dan and Harold. And Harold, your teammate. I mean, you got to see the early years. I mean, how wowed were you by this kid?
Immediately. We had known about his dad, and, Ken Sr. wasn't a guy that had a lot of power. He had power when he caught one, but he shot the ball over the place, and he could fly, and he was a big part of the Big Red Machine. So we all grew up watching him play. So when we heard Junior got drafted, you know how the number 1 pick always comes and works out with the big league team. He came in to work out, and he was 6'4", about 190 pounds. He hadn't quite filled out yet, but he had a solid frame. He had this big old Fran Charles Michael Jackson afro. All right. So he hops in the cage.
This guy.
He starts rocketing balls into the 2nd and 3rd deck in the Kingdom, and he's 17 years old. And so the next year he goes to spring training with us, and he was the best player in camp. It was ridiculous. It was just an amazing once-in-a-lifetime experience and once-in-a-lifetime talent. But Dan, I'm curious, being on the other side, I saw so many great things he did the first 4 years I played with him in the big leagues. Being on the other side, I'm curious, what did you hear and what did you see?
Harold, a lot of times the hype is better than the player. And I will say this, and it's hard to say who the best was, but my rookie year was 1986, and I played until 2003. And that guy you're looking at right there was the most complete player that I saw in a 20-year span. He could hit for power, he could run, he could throw. He was a tremendous center fielder. He was Mike Trout before Mike Trout was Mike Trout. You'd be hard-pressed to find 5 better players in the history of baseball that can do all the things that Ken Griffey Jr. could do. Harold, he was a slam dunk player. When you saw him the first time, he breathed different air than everybody else. That's how good he was.
And Dan, I'm going to make you smile. You know what his average was against you?
He took me deep in Seattle. That's all I needed to know, Fran.
Well,
are you going to show that video?
No. I'm going to give you a little love, give you a little dap. Only, I think, 5 for 22 against you. So he hit just, I think, 227, I'm being told by our great researcher, Matt Baker. So there you go.
But some of those 5 hits were loud hits, though, Fred. I remember a bases loaded double and cleared him, and I remember a bomb in right field in Seattle, too. So, you know what? It all evens out.
The ultimate competitor, you always remember the bad stuff over the good stuff, no doubt. All right, going to take a break here. When we come back, we'll take a look at the best moments of the draft at MLB Network. There have been some good ones. That's coming up. Hey, make sure you catch Play Ball coming up Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Some of the best draft memories over the last decade. It starts at 10 a.m.
The Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim select Michael Trout.
This is what the draft is about.
That is long gone for Mike Trout. Big fly!
The Houston Astros select Carlos Correa.
And Carlos Correa drives one deep to left field. Gone!
The New York Yankees select Aaron Judge.
He's a stud. He stands out. He's an athlete. All rise. Here comes the judge.
That is some good stuff. Back with Harold and Dan. H, we've been doing this since 2009, hosting the Major League Baseball draft at MLB Network. Give me your favorite moment, if you can, over the years.
Well, there's so many, and obviously we're not going to be in Studio 42 this year, which is disappointing. But Courtney Hawkins of the White Sox, I'll never forget his name, and I'll never forget the moment. So when he got picked, he threw this jersey on, and he did a backflip. What? Oh, my gosh. It was amazing. And all I know is Kenny Williams called right after that and said, don't ever do that again.
Yeah, he's now property of the White Sox. Don't injure yourself in Studio 42, right?
You know that's right.
Dan?
Mike Trout. I mean, it turned out to be the iconic player in the sport right now. But to risk coming to Studio 42, there you see his mom and dad, and just waiting around, I believe with pick 25, the Angels selected Mike Trout. We were all in the building that day rooting for Mike Trout. We had no idea that we were looking at the modern day Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays. There he is, Mike Trout.
And I've always said we should put a plaque on that bench and say, hey, Mike Trout in the first draft at MLB Network sat here when he was drafted, kind of commemorate that moment in time for one of the great players in our game. H, real quick, how special is it? I only got a few seconds. How special, though, is it that the draft is starting to blow up like we've seen in other sports and start to kind of get the recognition and do it deserves?
Well, it's real special. Been a lot of hard work going into it, being able to invite the players. And with the format we'll use this year, we're the best suited for this because we've been doing remote a long time with players on their draft time and when they get picked. So this draft's going to be great for us. It's June 10th and 11th right here on MLB Network. We're going to nail it. It's going to be great. Make sure you watch. It's going to be awesome.
All right, guys. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.